Welcome back to Unsolved Mysteries, exclusive series JonBenet's Web Truths. While our channel is still diligently working on putting together a historically worthy presentation for November 11th of this year to finally identify the sick puppy monster we believe to be responsible, we at Unsolved Mystery feel we would be remiss not to come out and address what we are calling the recent Gary Oliva debacle. For as you will hopefully see in this evening's episode, all of this recent Oliva hoopla is kind of ridiculous. However, all hope is not lost, because in a way Gary Oliva gives me hope that the JonBenet Ramsey case can actually be solved. Likely not for any reason you might think, but stick around until the end to find out what I mean. Because to begin, we need to get right into the man of the hour himself, Gary Howard Oliva, who is actually very familiar to law enforcement officials, particularly to Boulder officials, thanks to Oliva's longtime pen pal and supposed friend, Michael Vail, who here on YouTube is known as Mike in Ventura, at least since May of 2008. But our good friend Mike here has been suspecting his old high school pal, Gary Oliva, since even before this image of Oliva was captured by Ramsey investigators at JonBenet's one-year memorial service. And Oliva has been known publicly since at least July of 2016, as is evident from this 2016 cover page of a magazine called In Touch. But that appears to have only been the beginning, as the following year in 2017, Star Magazine would also run a Gary Oliva-inspired article, followed in 2018 by yet another In Touch article, and a 2019 Daily Mail UK article also promoting the Oliva theory. But perhaps most relevant to our story is the fourth bullet point listed here, as it informs us the Dr. Oz Show interview with Vail will air Tuesday. So over 4 years ago in February of 2019, Michael Vail went on the Dr. Oz Show and presented his evidence and accusations against Gary Oliva to Dr. Oz and Nancy Grace. The story drew a lot of media attention at the time, however it was greatly dismissed by those close to the investigation and quietly disappeared into the darkness. That is until just recently, when a journalist named Luke Kenton from the publication thesun.uk brought the Oliva story back into the limelight, followed 4 days later with yet another Luke Kenton Sun UK article, which interestingly enough came out the same day that Court TV released a video featuring Vinnie Politan interviewing the aforementioned author Luke Kenton, who basically just regurgitated Michael Vail's old tales of Gary Oliva. But this is where Vinnie Politan really starts to make some waves, as the next day Court TV drops this video in which John Ramsey himself is being interviewed. And unfortunately it appears Mr. Ramsey may be a little confused into the background of the investigation into Mr. Oliva. But John is asked what he knows about Gary, and he responds,
"Well, I'm quite familiar with him. You used the term, this person should have been at the top of the radar for the police. Unfortunately, we were at the top of the radar, and they ignored people like this in the beginning."
And for the most part, the Boulder PD have continued to ignore highly viable potential suspects like this, feeling content to just leave the majority of speculation and blame on this innocent family. But John tells us something pretty interesting as to how he and his private investigators learned of Gary Oliva. He tells us,
Oliva was referred to us by the Boulder District Attorney for follow-up by our detectives because I think he felt the police would not follow it up properly.
So let's make sure we have this straight. The Boulder District Attorney at the time, which would have been Alex Hunter, gave John Ramsey and his private investigation team the lead on Gary Oliva because the DA felt that the Boulder PD would not do their jobs properly? Well, that's mighty telling. But let's hear what else John thinks about this suspect.
And when I heard the circumstantial evidence around this guy, I said to our attorneys, "This is the guy." And they said, whoa, don't do a Boulder police on us yet. We don't know that yet. We got a lot of digging to do. So we knew about him early on, and he was certainly right up the top of the list of possible suspects for us.
So John tells an interesting story about his first reactions to Gary Oliva as a suspect. However, it seems I have heard part of this story before, specifically where he says,
I said to our attorneys, "This is the guy." And they said, whoa, don't do a Boulder police on us yet. We don't know that yet.
because I happen to remember years ago in a trial Mr. Ramsey was in with a man named Chris Wolf, John Ramsey was reading from his book Death of Innocence and says,
when we first started looking at it, one particular lead early on, my reaction was, this is it, this is the killer. And our investigator said, whoa, whoa, whoa. He'd say, don't do a Boulder police on me, don't rush to conclusions.
So that sounds quite familiar. But the man that was suing the Ramseys for slander, Chris Wolf, had an attorney named Darnay Hoffman. And fortunately, Darnay asked John the following question.
Do you remember who it was that you were made the statement, this is it, this is the killer? Do you remember who that person was the investigator had shown you material on?
Yes.
Can you name that person?
I don't recall his first name. Helgoth was his last name. A fellow that committed suicide on Valentine's Day, the day that Alex Hunter told the world that they were going to get the killer.
Right.
So according to this 2001 interrogation, it was actually the suspiciously suicided Michael Landon Helgoth that John initially thought was the guy, and not this Gary Oliva fella. But getting back to our recent John Ramsey interview, John is asked about whistleblower Michael Vail and responds,
I did not know him. I know of him based on this call that he reported, but I've not talked to him either. You know, it's hugely significant if that call was made before the news was public, in my opinion. And that's, I think, I don't know if the Sun has verified that or not, but that is very significant if the call was made before we found JonBenet and it was reported.
So John appears not to know when exactly this supposed confession phone call was originally made. And while I'm sure the Sun magazine also covered it, I was able to turn to this In Touch article, written 5 years before this interview, in which at the bottom of the page states, Vail reveals to In Touch what his old high school pal Gary Oliva said in the early morning hours of December 27th, 1996, just days after the 6-year-old beauty queen was unalived. However, if this story is even true, that would have been at least 18 hours since she was reported missing, and at least 11 hours since her body was discovered, meaning most likely anyone in that area would have generally known what had happened at that point. But let's see what else Mr. Ramsey has to say in regards to Mr. Oliva.
He was right at the top of my list when I heard the circumstantial information about him. And other than we don't know if the DNA was checked or not, but yeah, he's certainly not off my list at all.
Well, Mr. Ramsey, I feel pretty safe in telling you, I think you can mark Gary Oliva off your list. Because according to the July 9th Luke Kenton of Sun UK article that got all these Oliva shenanigans going again, under the Twisted Messages section of this article it clearly states, Oliva's DNA was taken as part of Smith's investigation, but he wasn't found to be a match for the crime scene. However, the story continues, as Gary Oliva's supposed DNA testing is further questioned in this August 10th Court TV special, where the host Vinnie Politan is speaking with Michael Vail and 3 people from the investigative team calling out Gary Oliva. And I will introduce you to the 2 ladies on the panel here in just a moment, but we need to tune into what private investigator Jason Jensen, who is kind of pioneering this whole investigation, has to say about the Boulder police and the testing of Oliva's DNA.
The only thing that they've ever said was in response to the 48 Hours Investigates episode was that DNA eliminated Gary in 2002. But what we know back then, their sole emphasis was the Ramseys. So we questioned in our investigation whether that was a sincere elimination of Gary by DNA.
So P.I. Jensen here cannot even figure out if Oliva was sincerely eliminated by the Boulder police through DNA. Well, we are going to turn to a most unlikely source to find some credible information. That platform being none other than Reddit. Because just recently on the JonBenet subreddit, an old friend of the channel, Gen C, posted a comment under a thread user MA333 created on Gary Oliva. But Gen C wrote, "Great research on this, May. This is interesting. Quote, at the time he was arrested and questioned in 2000, Oliva gave police hair samples for DNA testing," he said in the interview. Gen C says, "You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's how the police check DNA. They might have taken his hair sample to compare to the one on the blanket, but it seems to me that an official DNA sample would have been taken with a cheek swab," and concludes, "I wonder if John Anderson or the Smith family has any insight into this." To which M. May responds, "My thoughts too. In 2000, one would think it would have been an extremely specialized and costly procedure." Which is likely true, but poster Zelda Fitzgerald's cat chimes in. "Jameson probably knows. She has Ollie's files, I believe. A few weeks ago when GigX was being discussed, she said his DNA had never been cleared. However, Oliva has been arrested several times and his DNA should have been obtained at some point and entered into CODIS. Of course, this depends on law enforcement doing their jobs properly, so who knows. Which typically, when it comes to the Boulder PD, I would agree. But they conclude, arrestees in Colorado are supposed to have their DNA taken, and the CBI recommends doing it when fingerprints are taken to assure accuracy. And this is when our good friend Gen C reaches out to Jameson herself asking, any chance if you know whether or not Gary Oliva's DNA has actually been taken? To which Jameson herself kindly clarifies, I have documents that note he was tested by a swab, not blood or hair or tissue. The BPD number was 81JEH. I would guess Jane Harmer took the swab. It was tested at the CBI by Dressel, and the number CBI used was 256. It was not a match. She concludes, I really don't understand this new flurry of activity, but feel sure Vail is getting enough money that he is sharing it with Oliva. Those letters keep coming. So while Oliva's DNA has officially been confirmed to have been properly collected and cleared, Jameson brings up a good point. Those letters keep coming. Which transitions us perfectly into the final supposed evidence linking Oliva to the crime. And that is his handwriting, which Mr. Ramsey was also recently asked about, and as to whether it had ever been compared to the ransom note, and he answered,
not to my knowledge, and that's should be done. We were told by legitimate handwriting experts with the 3-page ransom note, that's a huge sample, and we can positively identify the writer with that much sample. And I don't know if that's ever been done with Oliva.
Which is rather interesting, as just 4 days after this interview, a YouTuber named Tyler Feller released a video titled Breaking JonBenet Ramsey Case Solved and Handwriting on Ransom Confirmed. Within this video, the channel's host, Tyler Feller, discusses another channel's video titled Official Opinion, Ramsey Ransom Note Writer Identified, which was originally aired on a now defunct YouTube channel named Mind Matters. And the Mind Matters channel was run by this woman named Dr. Mazel Martin. Now, although Mazel has since removed her original copy of this video, for the sake of properly documenting such a historically significant occasion, let's review and respond to the original bombshell announcement.
July 10th, 2023, Private Investigator Jason Jensen, working with John Ramsey, contacted me and asked if I would be willing to examine the ransom note and compare it to known writing samples of a specific individual, therefore render my official opinion. I believe one reason that I was chosen is because I would approach the case with an open mind, having no preconceived or biased views.
Okay, so this somewhat explains why Gary Oliva has been getting so much attention lately, and it sounds like Mazel is going at this with the most professional, unbiased viewpoint possible. But she continues,
this is in direct contrast to many other handwriting analysts, experts, and even the general public.
This is true. Most people have pretty strong opinions as to who they believe may have been responsible, so it's a good thing Mazel is not prejudiced in any way. But let's take it back a second and let her conclude that statement.
This is in direct contrast to many other handwriting analysts, experts, and even the general public who have unfairly blamed Patsy Ramsey and scrutinized John and Burke.
Ruh-roh. Well, I wholeheartedly agree that this family has been unfairly blamed and scrutinized. Her statement here deeply contradicts what she was just previously trying to claim. But she adds in,
It is important to remember that everyone reacts differently to trauma, and just because somebody does not react the way you would, does not render them guilty of a crime.
which I do agree with, but getting down to business, she says.
Since July 10th, 2023, I have been diligently comparing the ransom note with numerous known handwriting samples from this specific individual. I have devoted extensive time and effort to this task, working almost continuously, often around the clock. The samples I have examined include the ransom note, but also known handwriting samples from the time around the crime to more recent years. As a result of my meticulous examination, I have formed a highly confident professional opinion. I am hopeful that in the near future, I will be given permission to share my visual evidence with you. But for now, let me say this. Despite the possibility and likelihood that other analysts and even the general public will attempt to discredit me or my findings due to their tunnel vision and biased belief in Patsy's guilt, their attempts will not influence my opinion.
While it's somewhat admirable that she stands strong with her professional opinion, I don't even have to think that the Ramseys are responsible in any way, as I don't, to want to question her findings, or her credibility. However, she appears to have already thought ahead of this, as she states.
That's why, in order to maintain my credibility, I took the initiative of sharing my results with another trained question document examiner named Dawn McCarty. Dawn independently examined the same documents and reached the same conclusion.
Well, since Mizell is using McCarty as her official second opinion, we'll have to look further into her a little bit also. But not before Dr. Mizell Martin presents her professional official opinion.
Therefore, it is my professional opinion that Patsy Ramsey did not author the ransom note. It is my professional opinion that John Ramsey did not author the ransom note. It is my professional opinion that Burke Ramsey did not author the ransom note. Instead, based on 36 international years as a court-qualified question document examiner and forensic handwriting expert, it is my professional opinion that Gary Oliva did, in fact, author the ransom note.
Sorry, I felt that such a dramatic revelation deserved that noteworthy sound effect, for this was before Mizell and her crew went on court TV and officially presented their findings. And since they have, we should now take a closer look at these two supposed handwriting experts. Starting with Mizell's colleague, Dawn McCarty, whom Mizell has worked with in the past tackling such difficult questions as, did Amber Heard forge her own therapist notes? And helping us finally find out who wrote the Amber Heard or Johnny Depp mirror writing. And Ms. McCarty also has her own YouTube channel, where she and Mizell wrestle the really hard questions like, did Elvis write his own death report? Or even more importantly, is Elvis still alive? But now that we have a better understanding of the caliber of cases McCarty has assisted Mizell with in the past, it's time to take a closer look at our new friend Dr. Mizell Martin herself, whose search engine results link to a Cold Case Foundation webpage, an Everybody Wiki page, and most notably a Forensology YouTube page, which based on the description, one would think would take us to Mizell's Mind Matters YouTube channel. However, you would be mistaken, as it actually leads to a page titled Stop, Listen, Think, that now features 0 videos, and a rather interesting message in the description that reads, "So happy I left this poisonous environment of online mobsters." Which I can't argue with. YouTube is a toxic place for creators with all the naysayers and trolls. However, this is where her description gets a bit ominous as it reads, "If you're reading this, Get out while you still can. Okay, sorry about that. Mizell just seems to have a way with being dramatic, as there was also a message under the community tab that had just recently been written and said, "My channel was hijacked, but as I said I'd do, I am leaving completely. This platform is toxic and supports victimization. I will miss you, sideways smile." And with that, Mizell appears to have removed all of her videos and any references to the aforementioned Mind Matters channel. However, doing a search for forensology on YouTube not only leads you to the Stop, Listen, Think channel, but it also recommends a video put out by a creator named Crama Expose, whom you should all go view, like, and subscribe to. But they released a video 10 months ago titled "The Forensologist Dr. Moselle Martin Took Down Her Video of JSB's Handwriting," which I found rather interesting, as Mizell appears to have a history of posting and then removing videos. Now this one appears to be discussing some work Mizell must have done in relation to one Jody Sue Brown's handwriting. Jody Sue was supposedly a neighbor of the poor missing Little Summer Wells, which unfortunately is one of the many other cases I have not been able to follow as much as I'd like. However, it appears Mizell found the time and at one point appears to have felt it necessary to explain her involvement, intention, and excuses. So let's review and react to this video together, shall we?
I want to help people help themselves.
Okay, so we are off to a really good start, helping people help themselves. But how do you do that, Mizell?
And I do that by sharing forensology.
Well, that's pretty cool. However, while I don't know the full details, it appears your work has caused others heartache and trauma.
That's why sometimes I have to react a certain way.
However, similar to how she has just recently done Gary Oliva in her original video on him, it appears she did something very similar with Jody Sue Brown as she continues the video stating,
I'm going to be removing the Summer Wells related videos.
"But why, Mizell, why? Please explain further."
Because I don't want anyone to use my videos and my content to spread hatred or drama. That has never been my intention, and it never will be.
And while it may not be her intention to spread hatred and drama, it appears that is what her work has done in the past. Although her recent involvement in the Gary Oliva wild goose chase has simply been an unnecessary distraction that has not actually helped progress this case in any way. But she concludes,
I will continue to work on cold cases, like, for example, JonBenet.
And unfortunately, this is where the video cut out, but I'm pretty sure she was just saying JonBenet, especially being where we are now. However, I'm not the only one questioning Mizell and her findings. Most notably is profiler Pat Brown, who put out this video on July 20th titled JonBenet, DNA, and Handwriting. And while I don't personally agree with her overall belief that there was not an intruder, I can agree with a lot of things she says and recommend that you check out her channel at Profiling with Pat Brown. Perhaps even watch this video, I'll put a link in the description, because within this episode, Pat Brown does a bit of handwriting comparison herself. And it doesn't take a trained eye to see the dissimilarities appear to outweigh the similarities. So Pat Brown and myself are not really picking up what Mizell is putting down. However, we are not alone in thinking this. As the same day Pat Brown dropped her video, this Chris Perez article came out on Westward, titled JonBenet Ramsey's brother, that would be her older half-brother John Andrew Ramsey, throws cold water on reports linking Gary Oliva to 1996 blunder. Within the article it states, sources close to the Ramsey family, however, aren't convinced, and JonBenet's half-brother John Andrew dismisses the possibility of Oliva being his sister's iller in a statement to Westward. But the article continues. Oliva was first questioned by Boulder police in 2000 and has publicly denied unaliving or hurting JonBenet, but he also admitted being obsessed with the child pageant star and claims to have a problem being around young girls. I believe that she came to me after she was unalived and revealed herself to me, Oliva told 48 Hours in 2004. A DNA sample that he provided to police did not match evidence found at the scene, according to the cops. And that wasn't the last time the BPD investigated him. When Vail came forward with his letters and spoke to the Daily Mail in 2019, the BPD released a statement. The Boulder Police Department is aware of Gary Oliva and has investigated his potential involvement in this case, including several previous confessions. The department routinely receives information on this investigation. Information provided to the police department is reviewed along with the many tips and theories we receive, which I call BS that they are actively investigating this case at all, but the article concludes, despite the dead ends, John Andrew Ramsey believes it's important that investigators did their due diligence regarding Oliva, who has an estimated mandatory release date set for March 2024, which is kind of unnerving. But John Andrew concludes, it sure does seem prudent to run him to the ground as a potential suspect, which I could actually see as having been a sarcastic statement, as he and his family sure seem to have been run into the ground as potential suspects themselves. But as this article pointed out, Gary Oliva has also publicly denied any involvement in this crime, and a YouTuber named Cotton Star was kind enough to dig up the old footage and point this out. As with many other creators, I have butted heads with Cotton Star over this case. However, once again, I would ask that my viewers go over and give him a view, a like, and perhaps a sub, because he deserves it after sharing this rather hard-to-find clip of reporter Aaron Moriarty interviewing Gary Oliva himself, asking the direct question.
Did you hurt or kill JonBenet Ramsey?
No. No, I didn't.
Okay, for those in the cheap seats, let's play that one more time.
Did you hurt or kill JonBenet Ramsey?
No. No, I didn't.
Well, that works for me. With his DNA not being a match, his handwriting not likely actually matching, and his public denial of involvement, I think we can move on from Oliva. But I would like to thank Cotton Star one more time for sharing this video, and I would like to conclude this episode by explaining exactly what I meant at the beginning of this episode when I said Gary Oliva gives me hope that the JonBenet Ramsey case can be solved. Because while I and many others find Gary Oliva to be a ridiculous lead to keep chasing, the Oliva story has garnered millions of views in the last few weeks. And our hope is that when the world is finally presented with an actually highly viable potential suspect, that they will take that lead as serious, if not more serious, as they have taken Oliva. Because I have an even more viable suspect to present to you. However, even John Ramsey knows.
And but there's only so much a private citizen could do in this kind of investigation.
And sadly, I may know that better than anyone, as I am trying to do the best thing I can think to do by publicly identifying the sick puppy monster I believe to be responsible on Saturday, November 11th of this year. So make sure to save the date 11/11/23 and be sure to tune in because you won't want to miss this. Saturday, November 11th, 2023.